And you did the click here to join?
Yeah.
Okay. Let me get a hold of Frank, who is administering this, and let him know.
I mean, I can go back to one of your older links if it's the same.
I don't know.
I don't think so.
I don't
Arthur.
manage it. I don't think it is, though.
I
Okay.
don't think it is.
Is everyone else on or having the same problem?
Everybody's here.
Oh,
Are you on a telephone link though?
no, I'm on my computer.
That's weird.
Okay. Why don't you, while we're waiting for Frank to get back to me, why don't you get out and come back in? Who knows? That could do it. Okay. So Frank said is if he gets back in and he's an attendee, he can promote him to be a panelist.
And if he doesn't get, there he is.
Oh, there he is. Okay, it worked this time, right?
I use my browser instead of the Zoom client.
Oh, okay.
I don't know, but I don't want to
Frank said if it happened again, he can another time he can always make someone an attendee into a panelist.
Okay, I'll just use
That's
the
good
browser.
to know too.
All right, are we ready?
I think so.
I assume from Frank's perspective, we're ready because we haven't heard from him. So I'm going to go ahead.
Okay, I'll double check that it started on YouTube, but yes, go ahead.
Okay. Good evening. I'm Daniel Drake, Chair of the Nantucket Memorial Airport Commission. I call the May 11th, 2021 Airport Commission meeting to order. We're using Zoom webinar for this meeting, which allows for the public to participate in the meeting as an attendee. Attendees must register to participate. The registration link is unique to the meeting, and it can be found in the description of the Nantucket Government TV YouTube live feed for the meeting. People registering as an attendee must use their full names, otherwise they will not be allowed to participate in the discussion. Attendees will join in listening mode and they can click the raise hand button if they wish to speak. The chair will call on those who have raised their hands in the order in which they were raised. If you do not have an audio capable device, you can use a call-in number. We will not be using the YouTube chat function. All questions should be directed through the chair. As a preliminary matter, permit me to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. Commission members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Arthur Gasparo,
Here.
Tony Vuskarin,
Here.
Andrea Planzer,
Here.
Jeanette Topham.
Here.
Staff, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Tom Rafter, Airport Manager.
Here.
Noah Carberg, Assistant Manager.
Here.
Is Lily here? Yes, she is. Lily, Sylvia.
Here.
And Katie Perales.
Here.
Other anticipated speakers on the agenda. Please respond in the affirmative when I call your name. Georgie Nugent, McFarland Johnson.
Here.
We will have a group of lawyers with us for part or all of the meeting, but they will be participating in the executive session. Dave Mackey of Anderson and Krieger will be joining us, and as well as Mina Macarius of Anderson and Krieger. 3 representatives of the NSPR law firm are joining us. One is already on. Her name is Carol Odio. And also Harold Naughton and Michelle Green will be with us for the executive session, but they may join before we go into executive session. This open meeting of the Nantucket Memorial Airport Commission is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12, 2020, due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth resulting from the outbreak of the COVID-19 virus. In order to mitigate the transmission of the COVID-19 virus, we have been advised and directed by the Commonwealth to suspend public gatherings, and as such, the governor's order suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. Further, all members of public bodies are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The governor's order, which you can find posted with agenda materials for this meeting, allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded, so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. We do also allow public participation as outlined previously using Zoom webinar. As previously noted, the Nantucket Memorial Airport Commission is convening for this meeting by video conference via Zoom webinar and broadcasting on the Town of Nantucket YouTube channel. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and that all attendees are participating by video conference. Please be aware that other folks may be able to see you and to take care not to screen share your computer. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. All supporting materials have been provided to members of this body that have been provided to members of this body are available on the town's website unless otherwise noted. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda unless I note otherwise. Before we now turn to the first item on the agenda, permit me to cover some ground rules to provide for the effective and clear conduct of our business and to ensure accurate meeting minutes. I will introduce each speaker on the agenda. After they conclude their remarks, the chair will go down the line of members, inviting each by name to provide any comment, questions, or motions. Please hold until your name is called. Further, please remember to mute your phone or computer when you are not speaking. Please remember to speak clearly and in a way that helps generate accurate minutes. For any response, please wait until the chair yields the floor to you and state your name before speaking. If members wish to engage in a conversation with other members, please do so through the chair, taking care to identify yourself. Finally, each vote taken in this meeting will be conducted by roll call. Thank you. Again, the meeting is being both audio and video recorded. Are there any comments on the agenda?
No.
Hearing and seeing none, we will proceed. Is there a motion to approve the draft minutes of the April 13, 2021 meeting? Or are there any comments thereon?
So moved.
Thank
Second.
you. Is there a second? Okay. How do you vote, Ms. Planzer?
Aye.
Ms. Topham?
Aye.
Mr. Biscarin?
Aye.
Mr. Gasparo?
Aye.
And I vote aye. I would entertain a motion to ratify the April 7th, April 14th, and April 28th, 2021 warrants.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Ms. Topham. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Planzer. How do you vote, Ms. Planzer?
Aye.
Ms. Topham?
Aye.
Mr. Buscarin?
Aye.
Mr. Gasparo?
Aye.
And I vote aye. Pending leases and contracts. Mr. Rafter?
Yeah, we have a number of them. The Gamma Aviation business fee is still pending, but we have a number of other annual business fees, including Ross Retrix, Tradewinds, Reliant Air, Lehman Fly the Whale, and Wiggins Airways, all for $1,500 plus landing fees. We also have an agreement with Republic Airways doing business as American Eagle for $20,267 plus landing fees. We have American Airlines for $8,940 airline agreement. We also have Southern Airways for $44,910 seasonal airline agreement plus landing fees. We have the agreement with the individual property owners that the commission had approved at the special meeting. This is on there just so you can see the final copy of what that document looks like. We have a lease agreement with Hagedorn Aviation for $23,724 for construction of an aircraft hangar. Nantucket Regal Group LLC doing business as Crosswinds. That's the abatement of $54,957 that the commission approved previously, but this is the actual amendment to the agreement. And we have General Service Administration, or GSA, a lease for the TSA in the amount of $29,547. We also have a contract with Schmidt Equipment for $77,897. That is for the skid steer that caught fire and is being covered by insurance. We have a pending one with McFarland Johnson, and that is for the development of the specs for the maintenance program for the security system. We have another contract with McFarland Johnson for task order for $197,552 for PFAS Phase 2 source area investigation. That was for the soil sampling work that was not eligible under AIP 72, which is taxiway echo. We have another contract with McFarland Johnson for $7,300 task order, and that's for professional services to update the Exhibit A that is required by FAA on their new checklist. And then we still have the pending contract or pending task order with McFarland for plume identification on PFAS.
All right, I'm going to take the water service contract first and suggest, Mr. Gasparo, that unless we get into a discussion of it, that you not leave the meeting.
I'll just shut my camera off and mute.
Okay, thank you. This agreement now incorporates the changes that we talked about at the special meeting last week. I just wanted to be sure that nobody had any questions.
None.
You all happy with it, Mr. Buscarin?
Very happy.
Ms. Planzer?
Yes.
All right, I'm going to ask that we approve the form of the water service agreement formally. So is there a motion to approve it?
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. How do you vote, Ms. Planzer?
Aye.
Ms. Topham?
Aye.
Mr. Buscarin?
Aye.
I vote aye. Thank you very much. Mr. Gaspar, you may return, please. All right, are there any other comments or questions on any of these open items? Hearing none. I would ask for a motion to approve the operating agreements with Ross Rectrix HYA LLC, with Tradewind Aviation, with Reliant Air, with Lima and Fly the Whale, and Wiggins Airways. The airline lease agreements with Republic Airways, doing business as American Eagle, and with American Airlines and with Southern Airlines. The lease agreement with Hagedorn Aviation, the lease agreement with General Services, GSA, General Services Administration, the TSA space. contract with Schmidt Equipment to replace the skid steer that went up in flames, and the 2 contracts with McFarland Johnson for the PFAS Phase 2 source area investigation and for updating Exhibit A. Is there such a motion?
I'll move to approve all those contracts.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any further questions or comments? How do you vote, Ms. Planzer?
Aye.
Ms. Topham?
Aye.
Mr. Buscarin?
Aye.
Mr. Gasparo?
Aye.
I vote aye. All right, Mr. Rafter, the capital approval process.
There's been no change with that, but we continue to have dialogue with our representatives on the home rule petition item. And if it's okay with you on PFAS, I'll turn that over to Noah for an update.
Thank you, Tom. For my PFAS report, you have a table in your packet of an activity report update. The highlights that I've taken from that report are that we are up to 313 samples taken from 77 private wells, and we're at the stage where we're recommissioning POET's point of entry treatment systems for the upcoming season. 2 POETs have been recommissioned for the summer at this point. For soil sampling for taxiway echo related sites, this occurred earlier this month. This is the sampling that's done to determine the horizontal extent of PFAS contamination in the soil. And based on receipt of that data, it will inform where cores are located to inform vertical distribution, or the location for sampling for vertical distribution. We're expecting data shortly from the consultant as early as this week. I will, of course, email this to the commission and upload it to our public-facing website when it is received. Airport Gas has submitted to us a proposed drainage plan for review. It's with the engineer at McFarland Johnson for their review. Hopefully we'll see that next week. For the water service project, waiver number 3887 was approved by the state DCAM office, which gives us relief from the bidding work requirements for the internal plumbing and the external landscaping work. The last major item to go forward is a clarification on an insurance requirement from the town. They are reviewing to ensure that the insurance requirements are adequate for contractors working on private property. For the water main extension, we received a schedule from McFarland Johnson. On the front end bid documents and the bidding process, MJ is currently performing quality analysis on the plans. The current plan is to get the airport bid documents to review by the 19th of this month, with a scheduled bid deadline and bid opening of June 18th, June 18th. That concludes my report. It's a brief one this month.
Thank you. Ms. Nugent, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I think Noah covered everything. The work done last month and this month were in tandem with the taxiway e-sampling that was being done. So it was a more efficient way to get that work done.
All right, are there any questions of either Noah or Ms. Nugent?
No.
Thank you, then. We'll move forward. Oops, what did I do? Did I close it out?
You're still on.
Am I still on? Sorry. My worst nightmare. All right, airport number 5 on the agenda, the airport coronavirus relief grant program. Grant addendum for concession relief for $28,877.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, just a little bit of an explanation. This is part of the relief. We're expecting a second grant, and there's a process and a formula that FAA has established. We have submitted a draft work plan to FAA and have a meeting with them tomorrow to discuss and see if they agree to how we'll disperse these funds, but essentially it'll be dispersed to the car rental operators, and we'll get the credit, I believe, for the crosswinds on that. So we need to accept the grant.
Are there any questions? Is there a motion to accept the FAA Airport Coronavirus Relief Program grant addendum for concession relief for $28,877?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Ms. Topham. Is there a second?
I'll second.
How do you vote, Ms. Planzer?
Aye.
Ms. Topham,
Aye.
Mr. Buscarin,
Aye.
Mr. Gasparo?
Aye.
I vote aye. All right, we have a Mass dot pending grant award for $947,000. Would you like to explain that, Mr. Rafter?
Yes, I'd like to ask the commission again for authorization to permit the chair to execute this grant agreement when it comes in. It's due in this week. We have the award letter, but not the official grant. And as you stated, it's for $947,969. I want the commissioners to understand that the state has really stepped up on this project. This is for phase 2, but overall on the entire project, which is around a $6 million project, we're going to be paying about $6,000 because the state has really come up and they've agreed to fund all of the non-FAA eligible security required items. So there's just a little extra work that we're having done that we're going to be funding. So,
Mr. Rafter, would it be appropriate for you or me to send a letter to MassDOT thanking them?
yes, I've already sent one to Owen Syllaball, but thanking him and Administrator DiCarlo, but certainly, yeah, from you would be very nice as well.
All right, we'll work on something. Thank you. Is that all right with everybody, I assume?
Yes.
Please.
Minimum standards update and scheduled air carrier service.
Dan, I'm sorry, I think we need a vote
Oh,
on
I'm sorry. Yes, we do.
authorize you to.
Is there a motion to authorize me to sign on behalf of the airport for the MassDOT grant award and associated grant assurances for the safety and security equipment phase 2 grant of $947,669.82?
That is my motion.
Thank you.
Second.
Is there a second? Ms. Topham seconded. How do you vote, Ms. Planzer?
Aye.
Ms. Topham,
Aye.
Mr. Buscarin,
Aye.
Mr. Gasparo,
Aye.
and I vote aye. Thank you for putting me back on track, Mr. Rafter. Now, the minimum standards update. Who's going to talk about that? Mr. Rafter? We lose him?
It looks like we lost all of the airport staff
Yep.
from the participant list.
I'll call and see what's going on.
That power thing.
There's a lot of work going on over there. I know our power blipped today.
Null Shop did too.
Hammock Farm Road did 3.
Right.
Hey, Dan.
Hi, are you at the airport?
Yeah, we just got kicked out. Our internet's down, so I'm going to try to come into my phone.
Okay.
All right.
All right. Thank you. Tom? Tom? Hello? Well, I just wonder how the others who are joining us later, whether they can get in.
Could they call that gentleman Frank and get in? If he's still around?
I don't think I have his number.
Well, would they, one of them?
Well, yeah, Katie would. No, I don't have it.
There's Tom.
You back online, Tom? You're muted.
Sorry, we lost our internet connection here at the airport.
Is Katie at the airport or is she at home?
She is here. Katie, do you want to join me?
And Noah?
Yeah, give me 1 second.
We kind of need Noah for the next thing.
Yeah.
For those of you watching on the YouTube channel, if anybody is, just to let you know that the airport has lost its internet connection, is trying to get back into the call.
So Noah's going to be trying to get in through his phone, and I can ask Katie if she wants to join me here.
Yeah, they'll try to do it.
They're all trying to get in via the phone, so.
Okay.
Katie said she sent through her computer. I will try that again.
Will, my computer works.
Tom?
And I'm back on the computer.
All right, it looks like Noah's there too. Oh, no, that's Lily.
I'm back. Can you hear me?
Yeah, do you want to go ahead with the finance report? And
Well, I can go with the minimum standards too, if you'd like.
oh, I'm sorry. Yes, the minimum standards. Absolutely.
So we've updated it to include adding the requirement for GPU for commercial air carriers, but in discussions with the chair this morning, there was apparently an oversight. We don't have the definition for essentially what the 9-seat commuter aircraft are operating under. And that's actually what it's called, a 14 CFR 135 operating authority. There's 2 different types. There's on-demand and there's commuter. And it's for the aircraft with 9 seats or less and a maximum payload capacity of 7,500 pounds. So if you don't mind, we could bring that back to next month. We're going to add that definition in, if that's okay.
Well, should we adopt this anyway because of the GPU requirement?
We could do that and then just subject to the update of the definitions to add that, yes.
Yes. There any questions about this APU and ground power unit language on page 4? Hearing none, did you have a question, Mr. Gasparo?
Nope, I was just going to follow up your hearing none with a motion.
May I have the motion, please, to approve the
I would make a
amendment?
motion to adopt the minimum standards as drafted, subject to an update regarding the definition. Well, I guess the question for discussion is how should the motion be worded? Are we going to have?
I would just approve this and then we'll update it with a definition.
I'll cut off my motion to simply be to adopt the revised minimum standards as drafted before the commission tonight.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any other questions? How do you vote, Ms. Planter?
Aye.
Ms. Topham?
Aye.
Mr. Buscarin?
Aye.
Mr. Gasparo?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Thank you for that, Mr. Rafter.
Thank
Noah, are you prepared to go ahead on the, are you here?
Yes, sir.
Yes, there you are. Well, on the noise abatement data update.
Okay, I will share my screen for the presentation. So what I've prepared for the commission is our annual update on our noise abatement activities. We did not do one last year because of all the work we were putting through for COVID. But the commission oversees a number of programs that the airport puts into place, and I've put a focus on some of the noise and data. It's 19 slides, but they go very, very quickly. So the items I'll cover are the airport's landing fee incentive program, our noise complaint summary of our activities, some combined data that I've put together, and some conclusions and recommendations. So the airport's landing fee incentive program is a program that the airport has administered for, I believe, about 20 years now. It's not a program I own, it's a program that airport staff and airport commissioners before us created. And it's a program whereby the airport rebates 15% of landing fees for our eligible commuter air taxis in exchange for compliance at a rate of 85% with the voluntary VFR flight tracks. And this is one publication that illustrates those voluntary flight tracks. And what we found over the years is that we have a high compliance rate by our longstanding operators. I think it's worth noting every year, AMA and Cape Air routinely are compliant with these rates, and they receive the incentive program, or they receive the incentive, but also showing that we receive a fair to moderate compliance rate by unenrolled and transient operators as well. On an annual basis, the airport provides a rebate of a value of about $26,000 to $33,000 per fiscal year. It's dependent on flight activity. Years with high compliance rates and a higher number of operations see us rebating a greater amount of landing fees. For administration of the program, I'm showing how many operations we audit per year. Of course, everything for fiscal year 21 is data at the time that I put the presentation together. It's not a complete fiscal year. But you know, we audit a good deal of operations, up to 3,400 operations, 3,500 operations per year, and consistently about 240, 250 flight hours per year. 1 hour of flight auditing takes about 1 hour of staff time for about 250 hours per year. So we end up auditing about approximately 5% of our total annual operations once we go through a given year. And the way that we audit these operations, it generates a really useful database of detailed operational characteristics, which I'll go further into in our third bullet. So the airport also maintains a noise complaint program where we receive noise complaints from residents and members of the public, gather information, respond to those complaints, and report out on it on a monthly basis. One interesting item I'm leading with is the COVID-19 effect. Other airports have noted this as well. What I'm showing in, I guess it's orange, not red, are the pandemic era noise complaints generated per 1,000 operations. The black line is our historical average with error bars. The complaint rate has increased with COVID. A number of airports have noticed this, that even though operations have declined, a lot of people are at home noticing flight patterns that they haven't typically. But to move past this, this is a figure you've seen repeatedly through these reports where I show complaint and complaint rates since 2013. It's showing two items on this graph. Noise complaints averaged by month, those exist as the blue line and read off the scale on the left. Noise complaints normalized by 1,000 operations. That's the orange line that you see reading off of the scale on the right. And the first thing you'll notice is that there's a very distinct seasonal trend, as you're used to seeing for many things on Nantucket. Activity in a lot of different sectors peaks in July and August. Noise complaints are no different. We see another uptick for winter stroll in December, and it's very low during the off season. And even though the scales are different, the patterns are similar, whether you're looking at complaints or frequency of complaints. And we can further take the data and parse it out at, we can look at noise complaints or number of complainants. Over the duration that I've overseen the program, I've received complaints from 114 unique residents who issued 1,107 complaints since February of 2013. This breaks out to a rate of about 10 complaints per complainant, or 1 out of every 175 year-round residents. I think I just used a 20,000 figure for population, and broke that out for you in a graph below. We can also look at complaint geography if we so want. I've chosen fiscal year 2019 just out of convenience. And you can see that we receive complaints from all around the island. But it's not a useful database unless you drill down all the way on the detail. I've highlighted the 41 complaints for the Nantucket area in July of 2018. If you take this on an annual basis, yes, it looks like most of the complaints are generated from Nantucket. 38 of these complaints were generated by one individual in that month. And most years break out like that. There will be a high volume generator from a given geographical area, which skews the results. So just keep that in mind if we're ever looking at complaints geography again, that it does need to be taken into consideration with number of individual complainants. I've also broken out complaints that we've received over the program duration by category. The vertical scale is the same on all of these. And the items that jump out to me are, over the last few years, IFR complaints, tend to be the most dominant complaint in number. This has switched places from VFR complaints, which dominated the complaint matrix early, becoming less important as of late. The category for medical, military, and agency complaints, this big single spike is from the Podcopter event in July of 2015, which killed my voicemail with the number of responses. And then this fourth quadrant graph, noise complaints, showing runway closures, miscellaneous events, ground noise, all totaled together. Breaking out the VFR category a little bit more detail. Of course, you remember when Island Air flew the Cessna 208, we had one resident who complained repeatedly about the Island Air Cessna 208 route. But generally, VFR complaints are evenly split among the three categories of whether the complaint generated from what we determined on investigation was an approach or departure made at the pilot's own discretion versus one given by air traffic control versus a flight that actually was compliant with the noise abatement corridor but still generated a complaint. Still in the noise complaint summary category. On the left-hand axis here, I've graphed the percentage of total complaints and by month and year. You can see that IFR noise complaints appear to be an increasing percentage of total complaints as we've moved through the last few years chronologically, and that VFR complaints are a decreasing percentage of our total complaints. So number of complaints issued vary from year to year. But as a percentage of total, IFR complaints seem to be growing in abundance, and somewhat at the expense of VFR complaints. What I think is interesting and is the power of merging the two programs, at least from a data capture standpoint, is that when you combine the two, we can get a very good and a very high quality indicator of VFR and IFR operations as they occur monthly. And that's what I've graphed here. And you can see that not only have monthly total VFR and IFR ops generally decreased over time, but you can look at the relative difference in the seasonality. You know, IFR operations overtake VFR operations for our peak periods, but they're shorter. The majority of our time, we're still dominated by VFR traffic. For this figure, I've graphed at a very sort of meta level the number of operations in a month associated with the noise complaint rate. So the number of noise complaints per 1,000 operations. And you know what this graph shows is something you've seen repeatedly, and even in this presentation, is that residents don't just issue more complaints when there are more operations. Their complaint rate increases as well. There's either a threshold effect. 1 or 2 operations might not instigate a noise complaint, but a resident observing 4 or 5, that might move the needle on them to register a complaint. But where I go with this figure is that if operations decline, you know, consistently over time, as we have seen, you know, Nantucket Memorial Airport sees fewer operations per year, shouldn't we expect our complaint rate to decrease? But we find that's generally not true, at least for IFR operations. You know, for IFR operations, when you look at this trend over time, and it's a weaker trend, but residents do tend to complain at a higher frequency now than they did 3, 4, 5 years ago. And that, you know, despite our VFR operations declining, the complaint rate has held steady for those operations as well. What does it all mean, or what do I think it all means from this data at this stage in time? When I look at the airport's landing fee incentive program, I think that it has a ceiling for utility to the airport and possibly for the airport commission. What we've seen in Nantucket over the past decade, yeah, I'll go with decade, is we've seen a decline in the number of Part 135 commuters, not only the number of air taxi firms operating at Nantucket, but the number of firms that operate VFR flights. I hear of the glory days where the airport had 200,000 VFR operations a year. That's not the situation now. I think we would be lucky to have 20,000 VFR operations. I'll note that, you know, Cape Air has shifted a number of operations to Boston, and these occur under IFR conditions out of not necessarily weather, but out of airspace concerns at a higher rate. So even the air taxis that are here are operating a higher percentage of IFR operations compared to previously. And as I showed from the initial graph, we received 50% compliance with general aviation traffic where there is no financial motivator. So financial motivation, it's really, we're getting a 50% compliance rate without even trying. Whether that's being done on purpose by general aviation operators or by accidental compliance with the routes, I couldn't tell you. I pulled this quote from the FAA Neighborhood Environmental Survey, which was released in 2021. I couldn't have put it better, but they found from a nationwide survey that they found a substantial increase in the percentage of people who are highly annoyed by aircraft noise over the entire range of aircraft noise levels considered, including at lower noise levels. As we've seen from Nantucket, we've seen fewer operations. The operations that remain are stage 3 compliant. All evidence exists that Nantucket in the community, it's a quieter operation, but that isn't necessarily reflected in the number of noise complaints or noise complaint rates. And that if there is indeed a trend towards more IFR-based complaints, I'd say that this implies that future IFR solutions may be needed. Recommendations, if I might be so bold, is I would consider defining future noise policy goals, SMART goals, specific, measurable, attainable, realistic. And I've proposed some. These don't have to be the commission's goals, but what is it that you would like to see measurably reduced by the noise program? We've assumed consistency with FAA methodology, which is the DNL methodology. Maybe an L max or an L min or an L average would be more appropriate. I think there are realistic community expectation settings. Maybe it's an engagement target that's more appropriate than an expectation for noise and noise abatement. The commission is already doing a great deal, but I don't know that the community always sees it that way. But I think it's important for the commission to put forth what they value when it comes to noise abatement. Commission could consider hiring a lobbyist or a consultant. If we're dealing with IFR consultants, IFR airspace is a zero-sum game. If Nantucket is going to gain something, it's probably going to come at the expense of someone else in the region. So we could try to get a better deal. I would not recommend evaluating necessarily a new Part 150 or even Part 161 restriction, but they are options. A Part 150 study would update the 1988-89 Part 150 study. It would be a high cost for the airport to do. And there's a chance of getting a worse deal than the airport has now. The airport has the ability to really direct aircraft now towards voluntary VFR noise abatement corridors, and this was encoded pre-ANCA, the Aircraft Noise and Capacity Act of 1994, I believe. So you have a grandfather provision in Part 150 study right now. This might not be the case if you would go forward with a new one. The commission could look at a Part 161 access, stage 3 access restriction, things like curfews or mandatory IFR flight tracks. This would be at an even higher cost and a very, very low likelihood of success. I can't think of an airport. I don't think there's been a case of an airport that has been successful pursuing a Part 161 restriction. And I always advise, and I believe Tom would emphasize, beware unintended consequences. I hear a lot of messaging from some communities about metering departures to allow full offshore departures before turning. Well, metering departures may focus arrival impacts on a narrow band of the narrow ILS approach, and that might lead to other communities who see an increase in traffic. Forced APU shutdowns are another topic. I think forced APU shutdowns only prolongs the duration of aircraft on the ramp. That's my opinion, but APU shutdowns and ground noise are again linked to IFR space in the area. And that might also be illegal. So there's a lot to think about here. I've thrown a lot at you. I don't want the commission to think that they aren't doing enough. They're certainly doing a lot. When I go to meetings, when I speak with other environmental professionals, I think what you're doing compared to other airports is laudable. But I think consistent with what the commission has directed to staff before to stay ahead of the game, I think these IFR considerations and these forward-facing, what does a future noise program look like, are things the commission would want to keep considering, and I'll keep bringing data to you year after year as it evolves.
Thank you, Noah. That's very complete. Are there any questions for Noah? I can't see you, Mr. Gasparo, so I don't know if you have your hand up or not.
I did have my hand up. You have a sixth sense there. Thank you for this. I've been involved in working on some of this stuff from prior to being on the commission. And as Noah said, some of the roots and the work that's been done goes back, I want to say even 2002, 2004. And I think it has been positive. And I completely agree with him in terms of the fleet mix and the operational change that we've seen. It's time to also try to have a look at, how might we be able to have some positive influence on the IFR operations to the extent possible without running afoul of any regulations. And I think there's a greater discussion to be had there, following sort of along the recommendations. And my suggestion would be that we have a environmental subcommittee meeting to sit down with Noah and Tony and I and discuss what we might be able to do or not do, and perhaps come back to the commission with work group subcommittee recommendations, obviously as posted meetings, and perhaps we could involve some of the geographic groups that Noah mentioned, if in case they do want to participate. And maybe this takes more than one of those meetings, I was thinking. I think that a couple of thoughts I had were that, the way things operate from air traffic control under very busy conditions are sometimes mimicked under not as busy conditions. And I understand they have standards and it's very difficult for them to vary from procedures. And, I think a discussion with them as to what might or might not be possible in terms of, policy or guidance with respect to IFR could be helpful. They may have some ideas. And again, I think perhaps we have a work group meeting that we could invite the tower chief or his designee if he would be willing to sit down with us and offer ideas. So those are just some of the thoughts that I had on this. I do think that with respect to the noise, a major change that I've seen or noticed in the last decade has been the significant increase in the ground noise, as related both to the large carriers as well as the GA ramp and the amount of time that they run in some cases. I think that we really made some progress tonight with the update of the minimum standards, which hopefully can help, give the staff the ability, as well as commission follow-up, should, as there's leases that are being discussed and whether or not the staff reports that there is compliance over time with those minimum standards or concerns they may have. So the commission actually could have the ability to point to something and say, these are in our standards. So I think that's a real positive. On the north ramp, the question, of course, gets back to some of the stuff on the south ramp. And one of the thoughts that I had would be, perhaps it's time for an actual noise monitoring station there. They've come down a lot in cost. It might be something we could consider that just runs and both ops and staff would have, and perhaps public access to, and that could get to the LMAX goal that Noah noted in item 1, because in some cases it's a single, very loud type event. And again, I don't think we're into the following a 161 or trying to get into banning or curfews or anything like that, but at least we could start to have more consistent data. So those are all ideas that I had with respect to this that I'd like to further discuss at a subcommittee level. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gasparo. I think that's very helpful, and I think that it makes sense to refer this to the subcommittee for the next step, to look at whether there are options and what they may be. It's kind of discouraging for me to hear that even as the VFR operations have gone down, the noise complaints haven't. And what that is a function of, I don't know. I had a couple of questions. Do we know how many of these complaints have to do with departures, with arrivals rather than departures? Mr. Carber?
I didn't run that number, but my sense, Dan, is 2/3 are probably departure related.
Okay, but I think that's important. That will be important for the committee. The other is how many of them are sort of outside traditional business hours, sort of 9 to 5? Or,
I have less of an immediate sense. I guess. I'm sorry, I don't even want to guess.
okay, all right. All right, well, if I don't think we need a formal motion for this, but if the commission is agreeable, we can refer it to the environmental subcommittee for further study and recommended solutions. Is that agreeable to everybody?
Good idea.
Yes.
Okay. All right, thank you, Noah. It was a good job. Oh, I would say the other thing that disturbs me, frankly, is the amount of time that is spent on this. And, 250 hours a year is quite a few weeks, 6 weeks or so, 7 weeks of time, of one person's time. And when we started, there was an environmental coordinator who didn't have that full a plate, but now we don't have that position anymore. And unfortunately, it's befallen to Mr. Carberg to continue with this role. And I think one of the things the committee might consider is the subcommittee might consider is how to perhaps make this more efficient or less draining on Mr. Carberg's time. Anything else on the topic?
I have just a quick comment.
Please, Mr. Buscarin.
I think that conceptually, the committee should understand that outside the airport traffic area, which is a 3.5-mile circle around the airport, we don't own the airspace. We have no impact whatsoever with what Cape Air does with regard to departures and arrivals outside the airport traffic area. The reason we're getting more IFR traffic is turbojets operate only on IFR rules, and most turboprops, if they're going in any city, want to have an IFR clearance before they leave. That's why we're getting more IFR traffic. I think that's going to continue. But we have almost no impact whatsoever because outside of a 3.5-mile circle around the airport, Cape Air owns that, Cape Approach owns that airspace, and they're going to do whatever they want because safety is their only concern, not noise. So I just thought I would throw that in.
Thank you. Anything else on this topic? All right, third quarter financial report, Mr. Rafter.
Thank you. Last week I presented the third quarter report to the select board. And as you can see in your packet, total revenues were down about 18% or 2.4 million over last year. Main drivers are the fuel revolver as well as PFCs. PFCs are down $369,000. Fee income was down $462,000. And again, all related to the pandemic. However, even though the revenues were down below last year, you can see that we've already exceeded the full year projected budget and revenue. So that's good news. On the expense side, they were down 26% or 2.5 million. And again, main drivers were the payroll, which is due to reimbursement from the CARES Act. Total payroll is down 36% or 1.3 million over last year. And we've submitted and we've been reimbursed a total of 1.277 million in CARES Act. As of this report, an additional 1.6 million is pending and is not reflective in this report. So the reason that we really are looking as good as we are is because of the CARES Act funding. Without that, we'd be below water here. So the good news is we have a projected surplus at this point in time at the end of the third quarter of 2.4 million, as opposed to 1.7 last year. add that to the retained earnings that were certified last year of 2.8, and we have a fund balance projected at 5.3 at the end of the third quarter. But as we all know, in the fourth quarter, we spend more money buying fuel, and so that'll drop, but we still expect to have a decent amount of retained earnings for the end of the year.
We've also got some transfers up at town meeting.
Yes. And again, I think with Jamie's excellent work and management of how we've been paying down the smaller capital items and not taking things long-term has really reflected well for us. So the other thing that was addressed at the select board last week was the fuel revolver cap. They agreed to increase that from 3.5 million up to 4 million, which will allow us to purchase fuel to get through this fourth quarter. And you'll see in our statistics, you'll see why we're going to need that and how we're moving rapidly with our fuel. So that's good news. Any questions on the financial?
All right,
We'll move into manager's report.
please.
Just a reminder, the deadline for submitting for commission positions, there's 2 open positions, is May 21st. So please, if you're interested, re-up, or just want to make sure everybody's aware of that and the public is too. Project updates, taxiway Echo. The work on Echo and Alpha is complete. That area has been opened up. They expect paving to be completed May 17th, and shortly thereafter, that phase of the project will be finished and open. Security project training has been completed. A closeout scheduled for May 20th. They will be coming back in the fall to do some additional work that we have added to it. Fuel farm rehabilitation, the general bid opening date has been pushed back 1 week to May 18th. And the project duration has also been extended because of the feedback we've received regarding long lead items, as well as some supply chain challenges. So we're going to push that back, but that project will hopefully be done in the fall. Great Harbor Yacht Club pile removal. It's the best project we've ever done. Completed in very short order. Took 2 days. They got in, got out, and that's completed. Hangar development, Mr. Turner, we forwarded a draft lease to him. We're going to be in contact with him about setting up a meeting to begin negotiations. The Hagedorn hangar was approved earlier, that lease. On the RFP and bid status, we had a second round of deadline for concession in the hold room. That was May 7th, and we received no proposals again, so it doesn't look like we're going to have a concession in the hold room, although we're not going to give up, I don't think, yet. Bunker 32 was awarded to Nantucket Electric, and we're working on finalizing the lease. Bunker number 66 RFP is available will be available to the public on May 19th and be out for at least 30 days. The Maddoxsham Valley, the water line extension should be available to the public in early June for bidding. And we're working with MJ on the task order for the maintenance contract for security system. On the operational side of the house, as required, our full-scale exercise was conducted on April 26th. It went very well. I'd like to thank all the supporting entities, the police department, the fire department, Coast Guard, state police, everyone participated, did a great job. And I want to especially give a shout out to Preston Harriman for developing the plan, seeing it through, and coordinating everything. He did an excellent job. It was his first time, and I think he did a very good job on that. So kudos to him. Reminder, our FA certification is scheduled for May 26th through the 28th. We're working through some various Bunker Road tenant issues, lease term extensions, encroachment, some other violations and that type of thing. We're trying to clean up some things out there. So we had a second preseason meeting with the airlines and TSA to coordinate efforts for this summer. And we also had an air carrier meeting with air traffic to look at adding an additional air carrier parking position on the apron known as Spot Zero. JetBlue, as you may know, began last Thursday, and at this point has indicated to us that they are projecting a full schedule through the end of October, which is unusual. They usually start to trail off around Labor Day, so that's a sign of the times. Allies Air has identified a new president, and that is Bill McGrath, and we look forward to working with him. A note that the commercial vehicle operators have indicated to us that they're having a challenge with the RMV in getting the registrations. So the town has agreed to extend their permit process, and we're going to do that as well and work with the commercial operators. We're tracking an issue that Massachusetts Airport Managers Association has brought to our attention. It's a bill that was proposed by Senator Julian Cyr. It's S2305. And if enacted, it would impose a $1,000 landing fee for all private charter and corporate flights in the Commonwealth. It's to go to climate impact. NOAA's written to the senator's office and made them aware of some of our concerns and challenges they may face in trying to get that moved forward, but it's starting to get a lot of attention from the various trade industry groups. So we'll see how that tracks. Obviously we do not support that. It could be very detrimental to our economy and airport operations here. So as some of you know, there was a bit of a power failure apparently on part of the island this afternoon. We've had some hiccups with some doors, and bag belt is currently down. So Johnny and his crew are working through that. Another note that it may sound a little crazy, but in the foreseeable future, I think you're going to see electric aircraft. And, you know, when we talk about noise and ground noise and things like that, this has tremendous potential to, it's a benefit for noise, it's a benefit for cost. The operation of an electric aircraft is much cheaper than traditional. The carbon footprint obviously is nil. Cape Air is a leader in it. They're hoping to have actually an electric aircraft within the next 3 years or so. But we had a meeting the other day, Noah and I, with a engineer who's working with others, and indicated that the big players in this are Cape Air, Blade, and Southern, or their Mokulele partner. So more to come on that, but it's happening faster than I think people would ever imagine. If you start looking and Google some things on it, you'll see it's pretty interesting, but it's a reality. Any questions before I move on to statistics? Okay.
Go ahead, please.
Operations were up. We haven't heard that in quite a while, but they're up by about 3.6% over last March and down 29.5% year to date. South Ramp GA operations for March were up 351 from 184, or 830% over last year. And again, you know, last year
that's not a percent. Tom, is that an actual number? I just looked at that.
It's up from 184 to 351. So that's.
Oh, it says that it says it's 184 to 830.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, I think the percentage was 830.
It doesn't work out either, but
no, but I'm going to use, I want to explain, everyone, please use caution with some of these percentages, because last March was the beginning of COVID, and you're going to see dramatic percentage increases. But as I tell everyone on staff, we have to look back pre-COVID to see if we're getting back to the 2019 numbers. So employments were up again 343% over last March, but it's up to 1,583, not quite up to the 2019 level of 2,474, and still down year to date 57.5%. So Cape Air saw a 56% increase in employments. Tradewinds was up 58 passengers. The Boston market, Cape Air had a 58% increase, or 226 passengers. New Bedford decreased by 44%. Hyannis for March was up 63%, or 278 passengers. JFK, Cape Air only carried one passenger on one flight, so I'm not sure how that's working, but Vineyard traffic was up 97 passengers. The Jet A gallons sold for March were up 48.9%, and year-to-date is down 5.6. For April, and this is where I say use caution in the percentage numbers, for April, they were up 274.87%, or 17,000 gallons. It's a very high percentage increase, but still not back to the 2019 number of 27,197 gallons. So it's showing progress, but again, we're not back to the full 2019 numbers. Avgas for March was up 6,929 gallons, surpasses the 2019 mark though. So that was interesting that Avgas actually did better than pre-COVID, but is still down year to date 14.5%. For April, they're up 6,773 or 66%. And again, above the 2019 mark of 6,532. So Avgas is exceeding the pre-COVID numbers. Jet fuel is not back up yet to the pre-COVID numbers. Freight continues to do very well, was up 66% over last March, and year to date up 32, almost 33%. Cape Air is back in the business and carried 45,659 pounds. Mail carried by Cape Air was up 22%, FedEx up 30%, UPS was just up slightly at 1%. And noise complaints, there were 2 complaints in March, up from 1 the prior year. Both were from the same resident and involved VFR flights, and follow-up was provided to the operator. On the any questions on statistics before I move on to personnel? Personnel, we're still facing a bit of a challenge trying to hire some seasonal operations staff, but we are pretty well staffed in other departments. And we had 1 full-time employee resign in maintenance. Josh Wheeler has resigned. So we're going to be working to fill that opening as well. And there's 1 request I have for travel. It says it's at the NES conference. It's actually the NEC Northeast Chapter of AAA conference in Burlington, Vermont, which is included in my contract. I'd like to be able to attend that if possible. And that concludes my report.
Is there a motion to approve Mr. Rafter's travel to the AAAE Northeast Chapter Conference in Burlington?
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion or comment? How do you vote, Ms. Planzer?
Aye.
Mrs. Topham?
Aye.
Mr. Buscarin?
Aye.
Mr. Gasparo?
Aye.
I vote aye.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Tom, for that very complete report. Are there any commissioners' comments?
I do have one question, which I probably should have asked when you were talking about the electric airplanes. Is that something that Cape Air came before our meeting 2 years ago, 2 or 3 years ago? They were getting a new plane or something?
I think that was a TechNam, I believe. I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman.
No, go ahead.
I believe that was a TechNam, and they've received the delivery of those aircraft and have many more on order, and it's been operating here. This is a new next generation, if you will, all electric aircraft. It's known as the Alice, and it's built by Eviation. But there's some amazing developments in overall electric aircraft, not just your conventional aircraft, but what's called electric vertical takeoff and landing. And in fact, one of the reasons I want to go to this conference in Burlington is there's a Beta Aviation is headquartered or has an operation in Burlington. And if you go online, they have videos of their actual aircraft that's certified and flying. They have a contract, I believe, with UPS. And I think the military just certified some of their aircraft. So when I say this is happening quickly, it's a reality. It's coming at us very fast. And the reason NOAA has been very active on national level with this has been looking at what infrastructure the airport or airports will need and what standards may need to be applied and how it's going to be funded. So there's a local individual that's working on that, an engineer, and it's very interesting, very exciting stuff. It's, like I say, coming faster than you can imagine. I'll try to find a link and send it to the commissioners on this beta aviation, what they're doing.
The power that is provided to these planes, can the airport resell the power to them?
There's a number of questions, Dan. This is what we have been having this conversation with this local, well, I say local, he's actually has a house on the island, but he's an engineer that's been working on this for years. There's a number of those type of questions, and essentially what could happen is it could be that, just imagine it replacing the FBO. So there's also an analysis that has to be done as to what the impact on fuel sales will be.
Right.
In the business case, and who can sell what, and what the demand is and what the capacity is. In the beta videos, they show their, for lack of a better term, electric charging station, as they draw power from the grid, they charge up batteries, and then they charge their aircraft. I'm not sure about, as you're asking, what capabilities we have of reselling electric and who has to be involved in that, and so on and so forth. So there's a lot of regulatory issues. There's a number of things that we're just starting to put some framework around and figure out how this thing can work. But it's very exciting, I'll tell you. It's amazing stuff.
Great. All right. Thank you. Again, any other commissioners' comments?
No.
I see there's one attendee in the room. And I wondered if that person had it's time for public comment. I wondered if that person had a comment and could raise their hand if they want to. I guess not, because they haven't identified themselves by name. They're only identified by a phone number.
There may be one of our attorneys that's waiting to come on as well, Mr. Drake.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Naughton. All right, may I ask that I'll entertain a motion to go into executive session, not to return to private session, to review executive session minutes as enumerated for possible release, and to review the minutes of April 13th, 2021 for review and possible release. Under clause 3, to discuss strategy with respect to the litigation regarding Walsh, where the chair has determined that an open session may have detrimental effect on the litigating position of the airport commission. Under clause 3, to discuss, under clause 6, to consider the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real estate with respect to the negotiations regarding Nobody Farm Road, Sun Island Road property, where the chair has determined that an open session may have a detrimental effect on the negotiating position of the airport commission. Under clause 3, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining, where the chair has determined that an open session may have detrimental effect on the bargaining position of the airport. And under clause 3, to discuss strategy with respect to pursuing legal claims against the manufacturer of polyfluoroalkyl substances, PFAS, where the chair has determined that open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the litigating position of the airport commission. Is there such a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Ms.
Nobody
Thomas.
else is.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Ms. Planzer. How do you vote, Ms. Planzer?
Aye.
Ms. Topham?
Aye.
Mr. Buscarin?
Aye.
Mr. Gasparo?
Aye.
And I vote aye. All right, we have to make sure the YouTube channel shut down. While we're waiting for that confirmation, I'm just going to ask the commission's indulgence to move the strategy with respect to pursuing legal claims against the manufacturer of PFAS up to the first item, because we've got several people here who, or we had several people here who are interested in that topic.
Mr. Chairman, if the commission does agree on that, I'd like to just begin when you're ready on that one, introduce it a little bit.
Okay. Now, can you find out, Ms. Perales, who the attendee is and whether that's somebody who should be in this meeting?
Yes, I can. I can let them talk, I think. It's just a phone number, so it's not giving me the ability to let them talk, but I think I can kick them out.
How about you call them quickly and see who they are?
Okay.
And I'll be
While
right.
I'm doing that, can someone see if we're off YouTube? I did text.
We're still on.
Okay,
We're
I
still on.
texted Frank.
I don't think you're gonna be able to get through if you call them, if their number's showing up here, they're using the phone for that.
That's
Is it
true.
a 631 number, Ms. Perales?
Yes, it is.
That's Michelle Green. She's one of our environmental attorneys.
Is there a way that she can use the link to come in as a participant?
Oh, I'm texting her.
If she can't, we can, I just want to make sure that really is the number since the executive session is. I can give you the whole number if that's helpful.
I have it. I'm
Okay,
texting her.
okay.
It's all about multitasking. She's at a conference in North Carolina. I'm at a conference in Georgia, and we're talking to you.
Goodness.
We're waiting for some, make sure we're off
Frank said
YouTube. And
he's turning it off now.
okay.
She may not be able to come in on the Zoom. Is there any way you can give her access through the phone call?
So she can stay where she is. I just wanted to read you the number and then you tell me if this is her just to make sure.